Welcome to the summit about your true nature, peace, and freedom. And now I have the honor to introduce you to John Aston. And he is here. Hi, John.
Hi, Susan. Nice to be here.
Thank you. And you have a PhD in health psychology, and you also do some research in that meditative, contemplative practices. And then you are also a writer. You've written quite a few books, and you're also a songwriter, singer, you're a musician. You have quite a few CDs, and yeah, you're doing everything. So that's wonderful.
A few things for sure, yes.
But your heart is in our true nature, like everybody, and that's what you sing about, you write about. That's who you are. Well, we all are, but can you tell me about your true nature?
Um, well, that's of course impossible to do with words, which in many ways encapsulates the nature of my work, and which is really exploring. I don't typically use that term, true nature, but what I'm interested in my work on all the different forms it takes is exploring really the nature of what's here, the nature of what's present here, which we could call life, we could call experience, which we could call reality, which we could call this moment. This is what we have to investigate as humans. And this is what my work is about, is exploring what is the nature of this, what is the, if you will, kind of fundamental nature of what's present here, which would of course include anything that we might think of as ourselves as part of that investigation.
Yeah, and your newest book, you have it right there. Can I see that? It's the extraordinary moment.
Yeah, it's called This Extraordinary Moment, and
This,
moving beyond the mind to embrace the miracle of what is.
yeah, the miracle of what is.
Mhm. Yeah, the miracle of this miracle of this that's here, this moment that's appearing is miraculous in the sense of it's impossible to explain or fathom how anything even is, how anything is even present is the most astonishing miracle, isn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it's a miracle. Sometimes it's doesn't seem like that at all, right?
How does it seem?
Well, when you're in pain,
It's difficult. Yeah. Yeah.
when you see other people suffer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the miracle isn't necessarily, when I say miracle, isn't necessarily an evaluation in the sense of how we typically tend to evaluate things, putting them in the boxes of good and bad and positive and negative. Um, it's miraculous in a transcendental way, in the sense of I mean, even the difficult experiences of life, the challenging moments that we encounter, are we have many ways to describe those difficulties. Even calling it a difficulty or a problem is itself a description, isn't it? It's a way of trying to convey something about it. So we might call it a pain or a difficulty or a problem. But if we look at anything that's occurring, including those moments that we conventionally label as and think about as problematic, if we investigate what's actually present there, really outside of the frames of reference that we're bringing to it, outside of the interpretations, which doesn't mean getting rid of the interpretations, because it's hard to do that. That's what the mind is doing, is generating an interpretation of what's happening here. But beginning to discover the ways in which the thing that we're describing, whatever that is, the phenomena that's here, the appearance that is being described, say, as difficult or painful or problematic, or even wonderful and happy and fantastic, that those descriptions as well. In either case, when we investigate what it is we're describing, what it is our words and concepts are referring to, we find something quite interesting, which is what's present here can't actually be collapsed into any description. It can't be characterized, not in any kind of complete or definitive way. And so our descriptions, which are very powerful, and we use them, we're using them now as part of language, right? They give us the sense that we have some idea of what's going on here, and then we convey that with language, with concepts. But when we investigate our experience, we can discover the ways in which it radically transcends all of our ideas about it. It's too vast, it's too infinite, it's too complex, it's too multidimensional to be encapsulated into any framework of understanding. And so by discovering that aspect of our experience, which is always present in every experience, no matter how the experience is being labeled, that transcendental, indescribable, unresolvable, indeterminate nature of what's here can be discovered, can be felt as an actual reality. We're encountering it right now. This moment is beyond description. And that, in a nutshell, is freedom. It's freedom from all the descriptions, freedom from all the designations, freedom from all the interpretations, all the identifications, all of them. And it doesn't exclude all those interpretations. It encompasses everything, and yet at the same time is beyond it. And this is an amazing thing to discover.
Yeah, yeah, because you're free. You're free. Like no matter what happens, you know that there is that is always free.
Exactly.
And
even
without it.
even the one that imagines they are free or not free, liberated or in bondage of some sort, even that one is itself also an unfathomable, indescribable, indefinable mystery. And so our essential nature, if you were talking about true nature at the beginning, is that what we are, what everything is beyond all identities, beyond all characterizations, including free or bounded. It's beyond all characterizations. It's that transcendental. It's that infinite and ultimately uncapturable in our frames of reference, which is really quite something, because we, if you will, consensus reality or conventional reality we seem to be living in as humans definitely suggests that the frames of reference and the descriptions and the ways of interpreting things are more or less true. And we operate from that assumption. I'm a person living in a world.
Yeah.
And that's an interpretation. And from within that perspective of I'm a person, I'm an individual self living in a world of objects, of people, places, and things and circumstances, that's a valid perspective. And we all know what it's like, in a sense, to live inside of that as a perspective, as a way of experiencing things. But there's another perspective, you could say, which is what I'm really introducing people to, which is a perspective that transcends those designations, that and that can be discovered, I feel, relatively easily by looking and seeing what's here and not assuming that we actually know what's here. And that's the tricky thing, because our knowledge is so seemingly powerful. We carry these assumptions about, oh yeah, well, of course, I'm a self living in a world of objects. I mean, that just assumption is, if you challenge that assumption, people think you're a crazy person, because that's so basically just assumed to be true. But we can look and see if in fact it holds up under scrutiny, and it doesn't, as it turns out.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you do it? Like, how did you do it? How does it just happen? Or is it something you can you do something so that you can know that for yourself and identify with that instead of the person only? Or
Right. Well, I think, this is what my work is about, is trying to find ways to evoke the recognition of that and the seeing of that in people. And so I'm constantly inviting people basically to just explore their experience and to not assume that because they have words to describe it, that they necessarily know what it is that's being described. That's the kind of the trick of language, is that it's very facile, it's very powerful, and it kind of leads us to believe that something's arising, like fear or anxiety or joy or pleasure, whatever it is. And well, I have some way to convey it. And so we imagine that we know what it is because I'm able to convey what it is, right, with my words. So I'm constantly redirecting people back to their experience and inviting them to look at what's actually here that we're characterizing, that we're describing, what's present. And in a certain way, it's as simple as feeling what's here, feeling the presence of what's here. And it will reveal its nature, which is boundless and fathomless and ultimately indescribable.
Yeah. So when you rest in that feeling or the isness that we all recognize that there is something there, right? So if we just rest in that more and more, maybe something is revealed where it's, oh, yeah, I'm one with everything. I'm not separate. Is that what happens?
Yeah, I mean, the actual mechanics, if you will, of how understanding and discovery unfolds in each human is very unique. I'm very, not only reluctant, but I just don't typically lay it out in any kind of set series of stages of unfolding, of understanding and recognition of these things, because I just don't think it works that way. One thing, it's not that linear. And it's often a kind of bouncing around from understanding to seemingly losing some amount of understanding to then seeing again, and understanding deepens. And it's this whole kind of, and again, it's very individual how this unfolds in each human. But I would say that in every moment, and all we ever have is this instant, right? I mean, we can talk about this in some sort of timeline of unfolding, but actually all we ever, I mean, whatever happened in my past, whatever insights occurred, I mean, it's not that they're irrelevant, but in a sense, it's like there's just this instant. So we always have one time, one timeless time, if you will, to look and see what's here. And so that's one way of sort of keeping this simple, rather than putting it on some timeline and then trying to kind of measure, like, where am I along the journey of awakening or unfolding? And instead, just every moment presents, in a sense, the same opportunity, which is to see what's here, to feel the presence of what's here, and in a sense, be astounded by it, be astonished by it, and be awakened to its vast, indescribable nature. Every moment presents that same opportunity. And so we can, if we're interested, then we can get curious and explore what's here. Every moment that we find ourselves inspired to explore it, inspired to look, inspired to discover the infinite nature of what's here.
And in a way, isn't it also simple, because it's what we are already? So it's like we discover our vast, indescribable, all these, but it's also so simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's part of the great good news, is that the things we're aspiring to realize as humans, even just in an ordinary kind of human, forget about sort of spiritual seeking context, just everyday humans who are looking for a greater sense of freedom and latitude, a greater sense of openness, a greater sense of well-being, a greater sense of ease, a greater sense of wakefulness and consciousness, and all these things that we're looking for. The good news is that that is already the way life is. So for example, people want to be more open-hearted or more open-minded, like an aspiration for many humans. So that gets framed as an individual wanting to open themselves, and it's often very bodily, like I'm going to open myself, and we point to the body, and fair enough. But what we can do is we can look and discover the way in which life itself, the presence of life right here, presence of our experience, the field of this experience right now, is by its very nature complete openness. There's absolutely no border or boundary anywhere to be found if you just look. Just look and feel the presence of your experience right now. There's not one thing blocking another thing. There's not anything in the way of anything else. There's not any walls. There's not any obstacles. There's not any borders. There's not any dividing lines. Look and see if you can find them. And I would suggest you can't when you look. And then that is an awakening. That can be an awakening to see, oh my God, reality itself is already unbounded and already seamless and wide open by its very nature. So it doesn't require effort. It doesn't require practice to make it open. Its nature is to be open, right? So that's one example where, in terms of, to your point about the simplicity of it, the simplicity is, in a sense, in the effortlessness of it, because reality is that way, and that can be recognized. And then in a way, we get to enjoy that quality through the recognition of it. We get to enjoy this intrinsic, innate, open nature of everything, because here it is.
Yeah.
Here it is.
It's almost like open space, even though it seems like everything has borders, but it's open space. And then I'm that open space, and my body and mind and thoughts and feelings and everything that I refer as me is appearing in that open space. But the mirror is appearing to, the lamp is appearing to, the carpet is appearing to, you are appearing to, the air. It's everything is, I'm not just this, I'm also all that, really, because it appears. And it's a little bit like, yeah, I'm the open space. I'm not this little body mind only. I mean, I'm also this because I see the world from this, right? This is how I have eyes, ears, and such. But this is just part of it, of who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could say that, the question of what we are, what are we, which the human is asking, both, again, in ordinary context and spiritual context as well, that question of what am I, who am I? I am all that is experienced. I am the full field of experience, rather than our tendency is to partialize one aspect of it and imagine that's what we are. I'm this. And it's sort of like, I think somewhere in the book, I use this analogy of, I think the chapter is called The Body of Experience. And I say that if imagining that we're only one portion of this vast field of experience is like imagining that the finger is the whole of the body, right? The finger is, there's actually not, we designate this separation, this separate thing called the finger, right? But what's interesting is that that's an abstraction, maybe a useful one to refer to the finger. But if I'm looking at my hand now and there's the finger, my index finger, and then suddenly there's a hand that finger is connected to. And in fact, when I look at it, there's just a hand, right? There's no fingers, there's just a hand. So then we have this designation of that part of the body, of the hand, right? As if it's an actual independent thing. So then I'm looking at the hand, and then as I go up the hand, then I hit the wrist, and it's like, well, wait a minute, at what point does the hand end and the arm begin? Well, you can't tell, can you? So in a sense, there is no hand, there's just an arm.
Yeah, and then the arm.
And on and on and on and on, right? And so
Yeah.
What there is there's one body, to use the physical body as a metaphor here. There's not pieces. we can talk about the body as pieces, as fingers and arms and hands and shoulders and torsos and feet, but it's a single thing, isn't it? There's no
Yeah.
pieces to the body, actually. And we can take the same understanding as a metaphor and apply it to the whole of the field of experience and say, yes, it shows up as pieces, and I imagine myself as a piece, a separate piece in this field of experience. But actually, the field, just like the physical body, is a singular field that's showing up as all these seemingly separate pieces. But I can't actually tell where one part of the field, like if I look at you as an object in space, I could draw a boundary line around like Susan, like this is where Susan ends and then what's not Susan begins. But that's arbitrary. It's like, how come I'm drawing it there and not there, or not there, or not there? It's like you are inseparable from the entire visual field. There's just one visual field, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's not pieces, even though the world shows up as seeming pieces. And this is really, one of the key things to understand about reality is its seamless nature. It's fundamentally whole nature, that it shows up as pieces, but the pieces, the seemingly discrete boundary lines around the pieces can't be found, which cuts through that idea, that it basically shatters that notion of there being separate pieces. And we can feel that. That's not abstract philosophy. We can feel the seamless nature of our experience right now. You can't tell where one thing, I mean, it's amazing. You can't tell where one thing ends and the next thing begins, because there's not a gap, is there? There's not a gap between you and the world. So it's very paradoxical, because the phenomena of the world show up as discrete and separate, like the separate flavors. The flavor of sadness is discrete from the flavor of joy. Like they show up as just like flavors in a dish that we're eating. We can taste the salt, we can taste the sugar, we can taste the cayenne pepper. They're all like these discrete flavors. But actually, they're all inseparable from each other, that you can't tell the boundary lines from one thing to another. And this is what reality is like. You cannot find you can't actually, you experience pieces, but you can't actually find any dividing lines between anything. So it's very paradoxical.
Yeah.
That wholeness that is everything is,
Yeah.
I mean, just if you will, like try this with me right now. So feel yourself as an individual, as a subject, as a self, as a bounded self, that's sitting in a room, or sitting in the world, in other words, there's a self and there's the other, the world, that's not the self. So you can feel that, and then notice that, well, try to actually locate any separation between what you're calling the subject and the object. See if you can find any actual point where one comes to an end, the subject comes to an end, and the object or the world begins. You cannot find any gap. You can't find any division. You can't find any seam in the fabric of the universe. You just find the fabric of the universe. That's what's here right now, is just this seamless fabric of the universe. And from that perspective, there's not someone looking for something else. That's gone. That's absolutely gone. There's just this. There's just this seamless, shimmering, radiating, who knows what to call it, right?
Yeah.
See what I mean, though? It's like, it's quite something to, just in a brief moment like that, to cut through that presumed separation, and then there's complete well-being, there's complete ease, because there's no longer one thing pushing against another thing. There's no longer one thing in opposition to another thing. There's no longer one thing, a person looking for something else. There's just a seamless whole, period.
Yeah. Just that. So there's no person even. Like, it seems like I'm a real person here, but
Yeah.
it's just.
Well, that experience can, this is the thing, is that seamless whole, this is part of the beauty of it, you know, to me, a kind of aesthetic to it, is that seamless whole, which we were just exploring together, and feeling into the reality of it, it doesn't necessarily stop showing up as discrete, separate, identifiable, seemingly identifiable flavors and qualities and textures, including the flavor we could call being an individual. That hasn't gone away. I can still go right to it and feel it.
Yeah.
So it's inclusive of that sense of being someone. It doesn't wipe that off the face of the earth, even though it reveals that experience of being an individual is not the whole story. It's just part of the story. There's this other part of the story. It's kind of like, you know, you're a wave of existence, you know, a seeming formed wave rising up out of the sea of existence. And the recognition that what you are more fundamentally, we could say, is the ocean that is everything. And the ocean is, of course, there's absolutely no separation between the ocean and its waves, is there? So there's just an ocean. And
Yeah.
you can feel that. But that doesn't mean one loses access to the experience of being a wave. You get to have both.
Yeah. You get to have it all.
You get to have it all. You can be a person living in a world. Wow, what an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Amazing thing. And you can also see that that those things that we're identifying as seemingly definable, resolvable phenomena with separate existence, independent existence, when looked for, can't be found. And yet they show up, just like a rainbow. Rainbow shows up, doesn't it? There it is, in vivid color. And yet when you go to look for the rainbow, you never find it. You come up empty-handed. It's just space. You can't find it, and yet it shows up. So when you see that the rainbow can't be found, doesn't mean you stop seeing the rainbow. That's the thing. It's just so interesting. It's like it's still there, and yet now it's as if you've accessed this other dimension of the appearance, and that is its
Yeah.
as a Buddhist would say, you're discovering its empty nature. It's empty of identity. It's empty of resolvable identity. So in a sense, it's nothing is actually there. And yet that shows up as something very apparent. It shows up as the world. All this incredible stuff. The magic show of life.
Yeah.
It's quite a magic show.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. Yeah. And sometimes so something in me is like, oh, I see the miracle, you know, the mystery of life, and it's beautiful. But there's those things that happen that I'm like intense suffering, like the Holocaust or stuff like that. I just don't get. And I know that's the why. Why does that happen? But
yeah.
It's just there. It's like, oh, and it's so strong, right? Like it can't be. Why is that? Why does that have to happen?
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of different ways such a question could be, understandable question could be explored. I mean, one thing we could say is that a lot of what we might look at in terms of human activity that seems sort of out of balance or harmful or right arises out of this fundamental misunderstanding of what we are, because you know the sort of the kind of acupuncture point of all of this in the human that creates suffering is the the idea that something's missing, that we're lacking something. So we feel this sense of incompleteness, and then we go looking for it. And we try to fill up the apparent lack, the presumed lack, in all the different ways that we do, right? And some of the ways that we seek to fill that up can be, arguably unhealthy and destructive, right? I mean, something like drug addiction, right? So what are we trying to do? We're trying to fill something up that we imagine is missing. And we're going to try to alter consciousness in a particular way to feel whole again, to feel well again. So it's coming out of this sense that something's missing. And so the discovery that nothing has ever been missing will, I can imagine at least, I don't know, but the more that that's discovered by humans, the less tendency humans will have to act in ways that we would describe as, harmful and destructive, because where would the motivation be? We would be acting much more out of this place of recognition of our sort of inherent wholeness and fullness and completeness. And so
Yeah.
a lot less tendency to be controlling and manipulating and defensive. And these are arising, usually those kind of dynamics are arising out of, and, of course, aggression and violence. And these things are coming out of some perceived sense of, they're not coming typically from a place of recognizing one's intrinsic wholeness and completeness, are they? That's one answer to your question.
Yeah.
Kind of a more of a, makes some sense to describe it that way. But another thing we could also say, which is, also has a ring of, truth to me, is to say, or a simple way to describe it is that, why are things the way they are? Do you take a given person who acts in a particular way that we might find disagreeable or even be disgusted by, let's say, the way they're behaving, or maybe we feel that way about ourselves, and one might ask the question, why is that way? Why is? And the simplest answer is, the person is that way, the circumstance is that way because it is its nature to be that way.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, it's happening.
It has to be its nature because we're always exhibiting our nature. So when the tree outside my window becomes diseased and dies, that is its nature to be that way, as evidenced by the fact that it just appeared that way. It's its nature. That doesn't mean that in a human context, we might not take steps individually or societally to transform certain things. We don't have to just say, well, it's its nature to be, if you get sick, yes, it's your nature to get sick in that moment. Of course it is, because you got sick. You became ill. That doesn't mean that you can't take steps to try to heal the body, let's say. And then that would be your nature, to take those steps to heal the body. But in the moment of its appearance, however it looks, in the moment that reality is appearing a certain way, it can only appear that way if it is its nature to be that way in that instant. There's no other way to explain that. I mean, it's just, so in that sense, it's like, I mean, that can be helpful to see that in as a kind of remedy to our tendency to imagine that somehow people are capable of more than they're capable of in a given moment, when they're really not, actually. Everyone is capable of whatever they're capable of in the instant. So somebody asks, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, well, that makes me think of also free will. Is there actually a free will? It feels like we have a free will and we are making choices, but is it really like that? Maybe it's just the mind tricking us, saying,
yeah,
oh, I'm doing this, but you're already doing it anyways, and your mind is just kind of commenting on it, or I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's an absolute, koan, a mystery, the question of agency, of free will, because we have the experience of this not just happening. We have the experience of, it's like it doesn't, our felt sense is not one of we're just being carried down a river and not with no capacity to put our oar in the river and alter the course of our own travel down the river, because it seems like we can do that. You know, it seems like I can pick up the glass, the cup, and drink a sip of water. So in other words, some sense of participating in the flow of reality. Like it's not just like, it's not like, oh, either that's going to happen or not, and I have no say in the matter. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like I have a say to some extent in how this unfolds. It's all a matter of perspective, because from one perspective, it definitely is that way. From this vast perspective of the whole of existence, of which I am not an independently separate part of. In other words, anything that I might do that I might call I'm picking up the cup, in other words, my agency, my free will, if you will, is like, how am I able to do that? Well, because I have a body and a consciousness and a nervous system that enables that to happen, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, how is it that I have a body and a nervous system and a consciousness that enables me to pick this up and drink it? I mean, any single aspect of anything that I might do, from the simplest thing like drinking a cup of water to, you know, anything else, is the actual force and power and intelligence that's underlying that action is beyond any capability of describing or understanding. So I don't even know. In other words, I don't know how to do that. I have no idea how to pick up a cup and drink it, even though I can do it. So from that perspective, it's like there's a whole universe of intelligence underneath that one simple action. I mean, really, like, how do I know how to take my hand and form it in such a way to hold the cup and keep the cup and move the cup up to my mouth? How do I even know how come I don't go over here? How do I know to bring it here? All of that is intelligence, isn't it? It's the most incredible intelligence that enables that to occur. And of course, you know, you can even take this further out in a kind of cosmic sense to say that, you know, this body that's doing that action, this body mind, depends completely upon the whole environment and the biosphere in order to even be here in the first place, in order to be able to engage in such an action. And the entire biosphere depends upon, you know, the rest of the cosmos for its support. And so really what I call an action of an individual action of an agent, of a free agent drinking a cup of water, it's not even just metaphysics or poetry to say, actually, that was the universe that just did that. The whole universe just did that, because that's literally what happened. So in that sense, the idea of free will is kind of like funny, because like this is being done by something that I cannot fathom. This is being energized by and fueled by and by something, you know, by the mystery, by, you know, there's no words for it. So it's very strange. So from that sense, I'm not the doer of anything. The universe is the doer of everything, or God is the doer of everything, if you put it in theological terms. But because I am the universe, I mean, what I am fundamentally is nothing but the universe, the absolute reality, because that's what else is there. So everything is that. So from that standpoint, I am the doer. I'm the doer of all things. Not John, the individual, but John, who is ultimately none other than the cosmos itself and the unfathomable infinite reality. So yeah, so that's a long-winded answer to your question about free will, but it's a fun thing to explore, you know, because it's one of those assumptions that we have that.
But it's actually not reality, it's an assumption. It's something we're taught.
It's an assumption. And again, like the same as the assumption that we sort of deconstructed earlier of being a self in a world of objects can be seen through by just feeling the seamless nature of this, the undivided nature of this field of experience, cuts through that seeming separation between self and other. The same with drinking a cup of water. It's like, if I say I picked up the cup and drank the water, each part of that sentence, each part of that narrative can be explored. Okay, who's the one who picked up the cup? Well, I can't find that one, even though I can have a sense of it. I can't find the cup either. What's a cup? Well, the cup is an experience, and the experience is beyond comprehension. It's beyond, it's this rich, vast infinity of textures and qualities and flavors, and what I call a cup, and drinking water. Each part of that is, there's a whole universe in each one of those parts of that narrative of I drank a cup of water. And so it's like, I can't remember, there's this great line in one of Salinger's books, might be, maybe it's Franny and Zoe, where he's kind of getting this same idea, and it's something about, I think the boy is like, I'm going to ruin the story because I can't remember it exactly, but something like he's drinking like a cup of milk, but it's basically like, you know, God is drinking God, basically, which is, yeah, exactly. So from that standpoint, it blows the whole thing wide open, and the whole idea of just being a little tiny limited being in a vast cosmos is like, no, that's not the whole story either.
Right. Yeah, it's almost like, yeah, there's nothing here other than the one, you know, or yeah,
like from one perspective, Susan's sitting here on a chair having a conversation, as is John.
yeah,
It's one viewpoint, isn't it? And then if you feel what are the limits of Susan, what are the limits of this body, mind, maybe that we often refer to as ourselves, feel that, and you discover that what we imagine is limited and bounded is unlimited and unbounded, fundamentally.
yeah.
You feel that. You can't, the proof of that is you can't get to the end of, where is the end of you? Where do you come to an end? Can't find an end. You're unbounded.
There's no end. Yeah,
There's no end.
find it.
And it's so, it's so luscious to feel that, and so amazing.
Yeah, and then there's this kind of rainbow body that appears that makes it look like, oh, this is all I am. You know?
Absolutely, yeah. It looks like this bounded. It looks like, you look at the ocean, there's the wave. It looks like a wave. I can see it. I can identify. But I put a kind of a limit around the edges of it. It's like, there's the edge of, I can see the edges of Susan. There's the wave of Susan.
Yeah.
But it's just a little thing that consciousness does. It puts circles around things. There's one piece, the chair, there's the table, there's Susan on my computer, there's my cup. I'm putting little circles, consciousness doing this, putting circles around all these apparent objects. But consciousness can also look and realize the circles are arbitrary, because actually I can't tell where that chair really ends. Where's the edge of the chair? Okay, there's the edge, but actually I can't, if I look, I can't actually see very clearly where the edge is. It's blurry, it's ambiguous.
Mm.
You know, there's a great parallel of this in physics, right? It's like physics, just, you look at a table, and the computer's on this table, it looks solid and bounded, and right, it's got a boundary, but you investigate what it's made of from a standpoint of physical matter, and what do you end up with? Space.
Yeah. Yeah.
No boundaries anywhere.
Right. When you zoom in, zoom, yeah, then
Zoom in, exactly. And in a sense, you know, we could say the kind of inquiry that I invite people into is a kind of zooming in of sorts into zooming in the sense of sort of metaphorically speaking, getting up really close to your experience, you know, look really closely at it, really investigate it, not analytically, but in a feeling sort of way, in an experiential way. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me, Susan, how we have experience. It's what our lives are all about, and what we talk about is experience. And yet, how infrequently do we ask the question, what is our experience? I mean, what is it actually? And it's the most profound question. What is it?
Yeah.
And there's no answer to the question.
Right.
Which turns out to be the answer. But.
Yeah, it's this, I guess.
This.
Oh.
The simplest of human experiences, the simplest thing of like, the touch of a hand, just like sensation. Okay, and I've just named it. Oh, I know what it is. It's sensation. It's experience. Now, let me really investigate that experience. Okay, feel that. And what is sensation? Got a name for it. Scientists have a name for it. But what is it really that I'm naming? It's this absolute, like, what is it? It's like this kind of sparkling, shining, scintillating, vibrating, pulsing, sizzling, alive, radiance, it's a radiance. It's a
very alive. Yeah.
Very alive. Everything is so alive and so vital and so electric. It's all so electric. Yeah. But I'm throwing words at something that there really are no words for, but maybe that can help capture a little bit of its less clear-cut, less definable nature, and so open-ended. It
was just beautiful. Wow. And so I've read some of your books, and the way you write is also, some of it's kind of like poetry too, but it's so simple and clear, and I just love it. And can you show me your book again? I just want to make sure everybody.
Yeah, This Extraordinary Moment.
Yeah, The Extraordinary Moment, and also your CDs, and there is a PDF also on your website I saw, where you can just go in and download it. And
I just pulled together. I've been writing for the last, since this book came out, these little kind of brief little invitations to investigate and inquire and be with our experience in ways maybe we're not typically with our experience, and explore it. And so I've just been writing these little, posting them on social media, and I just decided to kind of pull them all together and create a little free ebook so people can download that and have it.
Yeah, because they're beautiful photos and beautiful quotes. So
called the little ebook is called Everything is the Doorway.
Yeah.
And, that's
so what's your website?
The website is just my name, johnaston.com.
Okay. And your music is also, everything is on your website, so people can go there.
Everything's there. Yeah.
And do we have time for a little song? Or
sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What a treat.
I know with Zoom sometimes the audio is kind of less than ideal, but hopefully this will sound nice. This song is called No Escape, and it's one of my favorite songs. It's kind of, it plays with this idea that we imagine that we're looking for whatever presence or God or freedom, and we can discover through the kinds of investigations you and I've been talking about today that we've never been anything but that which we're looking for. And so actually there's no escaping presence, because presence is the only thing that exists.
Yeah.
That turns out that in a sense we're caught in presence. We can't get out of it. And that recognition of being caught in presence, we can't ever escape it, is freedom, because we're always home. We're always here.
Oh, yes.
There is no escape from here. We are hopelessly trapped inside this maze of truth. There is no dry land anywhere, 'cause everything is wet, everything is wet, everything is wet in the ocean. Everything is wet, everything is wet, everything is wet in the ocean. What grace to know and revel in the ecstasy of this sweet bondage that is our liberation. 'Cause everything is wet, everything is wet, everything is wet in the ocean. Everything is wet, everything is wet, everything is wet in the ocean. Everything is wet, everything is wet, everything is wet in the ocean. Everything is wet in the ocean. Everything is wet in the ocean. Everything is wet in the ocean.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, it's I get all teary. But it's just beautiful. Oh, thank you.
You're so welcome, Susan.
Oh, thank you, John. I so much appreciate it. And I know people are gonna love this. So you're just speaking so from the heart, and you're a genius, really. So thank you.
It's lovely to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Mm.